Hey, how you doing? You may have noticed that I am not streaming today. The reason is because I am kind of burnt out at this point, and I wanted to take a break from it. There are 17 days left, 11 hours, and something hours and minutes. You don't need to go into the details, but just know that by this point of me talking and recording my voice, there are 17 days left until Endwalker comes out for early release. This video is only here to fill in the day. This is not something I usually do. I don't usually make something without a script. I don't usually make these conversations without a script because I really do run on with sentences, and I kinda just struggle when it's not a script in front of my face. So what I wanted to do in this video was talk about the things that I am going to be doing in Endwalker and what I wish to see furthermore when it comes to Final Fantasy into the future. So it's kind of like what I want to see in Endwalker and what I want to see afterwards. First things first, yes, I'm going to be playing as the Dark Knight throughout the entirety of Endwalker. Dark Knight is my favorite job within the game, and it's going to stay as my #1 job within the game, and I do not care how underwhelming it seems. But if I were to say anything, my judgment with Dark Knight at all is in a place of loving care. I do criticize how Dark Knight seems to be very underwhelming, but I love the job very much. With that being said, the action trailer was actually very underwhelming, to say the least, when it comes to the Dark Knight. They get a giant wave that kind of looks like Dark Passenger, and you know, a lot of people have made memes about the fact that we get Dark Passenger again, and I have to agree. Dark Knight used to have a slew of abilities that made it its own unique kind of tank. It was the originator of the low blow before giving it to everybody else, and it used to have a dot called Scourge, which we don't even have a dot anymore. Well, unless you count Living Shadow. But Living Shadow isn't even a dot because it has to move around, it has animations, it can just go from one place to another. If the enemy moves, it has to literally run over to the enemy to do damage. So it's just a walking AoE, I guess? Not to mention the abilities that I wish that they brought back, like Blood Price, which gave you MP every time you got hit. That, coupled with Abyssal Drain when it was actually good, made it so much better because upon using it, you got MP back whenever you got hit through Blood Price, right? And Abyssal Drain didn't have a restriction. There was no restriction. It automatically was just 2.5 and it was an instant and there was no recast, and you could have just done it over and over and over as long as you had the MP to use it. You basically didn't lose health as a Dark Knight, and that was throughout Stormblood. And yeah, I could go on and on about the Dark Knight and how it was great in the past and all that other stuff, but right now I do feel as though that it is balanced, and I guess I see what it's trying to do. It's trying to be the best of all worlds when it comes to being a tank. As of right now, the one thing that it lacks is damage. It's lowest on the damage scale, but when it comes right down to it, tanks and their damage are all kind of like next to each other. If you've ever seen or gone through experimenting with your tanks, or if you've looked up any of the balances and what their numbers were for all the tanks. Point is, all the tanks were relatively in the same spot when it came to damage, and Gunbreaker was only at its height because really it had the shortest GCDs with its continuation, and it was basically a DPS and a coat. So, but yes, I am going to continue to use the Dark Knight all the way through Endwalker, and I do want to see if I can make it better, somehow see it as a fun tank job. I mean, the Gunbreaker has this giant explosion X, you got the warrior swinging, jumping in the air and swinging down, like that's completely awesome. You have the paladin literally bringing down swords of revealing light from the sky to stop its enemies, and then you got the Dark Knight, which has a wave, a slice, a beam, basically Dark Passenger, so it's not really aesthetically pleasing to look at, and that's just my opinion. That is my opinion. You have the warrior that is going like ooga berserker. You got the Gunbreaker, which is looking pretty flashy and cool with a gun for a blade, and you got the paladin, which is all light sorcery shields. I mean, now they're raining swords down from the sky. Come on. I remember that Dark Knight actually had a third ability that wasn't Soul Eater. It was called Power Slash. You know what you did with it? They swung their sword overhead, they beat the crap out of the enemy, and they had their hands sticking out, basically doing a Trunks. But again, that's in the past, and I'm going to have to move forward. Now, what am I really excited for when it comes to Endwalker? Well, the stories and the lores and the areas, of course. I was thinking about in the future that I would actually explore much of the lands of Eorzea, talk about the area, how it became that way, the menu monuments that you probably see throughout the areas, and all that other good junk. It's pretty much a video talking about the mysteries of the land. So, for instance, you know how in Falcon's Nest, it's all shivery cold with mountains and all that other junk, and you go go down, you see a giant skeleton of a dragon. You go in even further, you see this giant twisted monument, which we don't all know what that is exactly, but I want to explore that. It's kind of an extension of lores for Final Fantasy XIV, and I want to see if I can tackle that. Honestly, this idea came from VaatiVidya, and if you don't know who VaatiVidya is, well, he's gonna have a lot of work to do because Elden Ring is coming out next year in February, and he is one of the biggest Soulsborne kind of lore finders, and people who just talk about that kind of stuff. He's great, and you might as well just watch him because his story times, his lore finding, his way of talking is just amazing. Now, what exactly am I looking forward to into the future? Well, I am looking forward to the PvP. I really want to get into the PvP. It does look fun. I used to play a lot of Splatoon, and that's what it reminds me of. I didn't play a lot of Team Fortress, which is a lot of people's go-to when comparing the new PvP. And even after that, I am looking forward to what they have in the future beyond Endwalker. For instance, any more mini games that they probably could think of? Maybe something involving being underwater with a ball or something? A man can dream, you know, just let me have this. But what I'm really looking forward to is the outside world, the old world. We don't have a lot of detail on what the old world is like. We don't have a lot of detail of how the entire world looks because we have only seen this one continent here. And a lot of people seem to forget that this isn't the whole world. There is a much larger world out there beyond what we have right here, even beyond Charlayan. That's like the farthest we're gonna go, honestly. You may even point out Eureka as the farthest point we've ever been, but seriously, there is a lot of the world that they can use to make another story for Final Fantasy XIV, and that's what I'm looking forward to. I'm honestly looking forward to any of the jobs that they can think of. We're honestly running out, and I do look forward to seeing what kind of areas and lands that they can come up with, because honestly, I'm just too curious as to know like what's in the old world. We've talked about the old world a few times, and we've got a job from the old world, which is the Blue Mage. So yeah, I'm really curious. And the last thing I do want to say, even though I wish for all these things for the Dark Knight, it does not mean that I don't think it's not going to do well in Endwalker. In fact, I think it's going to do fine. To be honest, there are a lot of ideas for which I think they could change about the Dark Knight and still be able to be fun and keep up and not break the game, but that's all for them to think about, and hopefully maybe suggestions like from me or anybody else within the 14 sphere can give a little hand or nudge to Yoshida and his team. And again, this comes from a place of love. A lot of people think that when you criticize something, you are automatically assuming that they hate it, and that's just not the case. I love the Dark Knight, and I will always play the Dark Knight, and I'm not just going to sit here and let Dark Knight not be fun for a lot of people. I wish to see a whole bunch of people and everybody to use the Dark Knight. I just wish that it wasn't so underwhelming from what it looks like, and from what the tooltips say, it's just it worries me, okay? It worries me. Like, if they don't change anything at all for the Dark Knight, please change this one thing. Living Dead sucks. It absolutely is garbage. It is the worst invuln in the game. I don't care how thematic you think it is still the shittiest invuln that I've ever seen in any MMO that involves a tank and having abilities that involve invulnerability. I'm just saying, it's that bad. And I hope and I wish that they will change it to something else in the future, because it absolutely sucks. Anyone can give me any idea as to why Living Dead is actually good, please leave it in the comments below, and I will read it, definitely. Trust me, I will read it. I will stand on my soapbox and say that Living Dead is the absolute worst invuln I have ever seen. It sucks, and they really do need to change that. Thanks for coming to my TED Talk, and I will see you guys in the next video. Bye.